Needs bigger. Oh, video's back. Hey, all right. Can y'all hear me? Yes, they can hear me. All right. So, a quick introduction. My name's Hugh. I go by Tiger Wraith in the forums and Discord and on Twitch. My session is going to be show y'all some little tips and tricks of what I do when I do a conversion. But first, I told James I'd give y'all a little closer look at the bases coming in the swag bag. So here before you are the 5 you'll see in the swag bag. Now they will not be painted like these when they come towards you. They'll just be regular burned in MDF, but you can see the magic that John himself has worked on these. And in the center is the one that James was really excited about. All right. I'm looking forward to this one right here myself. I'm going to have lots of fun with these, and Cav Boss has already got them cut up in the right size for me as well. 40 millimeters, which I put on all of mine. All right, so move these out the way. So as y'all know, when I want a particular cav and it's not in production, I don't wait for John to put it in production. I will do just like I did with this. For my CAV-CON force, I wanted to bring in a Cyclops, and those are not in production right now. He's got others that we showed y'all today that are in the pipe, so this is one that's not going to be up for grabs anytime soon. So what do? Well, I go and I make one. And the base model of this is the Enforcer. What I did was I chopped the arms off right here, close to the shoulder bits. And the other thing I did was I used the rocket turrets from the new terrain pieces. The arms, I just simply cut those off straight down, use some putty to fill it in, and then for the top ones, I took a second set, chopped them off here, filled it in. I also took out this piece as I didn't want it there, and then I reused the centerpiece to give it some separation. Yep, this is the Cyclops is the Adon fire support, kind of like what the Tiamat is for the Ritter, and what the Mogwai is for the Malvernus, except for that bit right there. There is an autocannon on this baby, so it's got a little bit of, if you do get some aircraft behind the enemy lines, it can help protect itself. So we'll go cover this more in detail a bit. So, we're going to do something a little non-combat wise. Um, as I said, coming in today, there's a 5-gallon bucket and it's full of nothing but parts to calves. Either the company packed extra bits in the calves, and before they went to packaging, they had to be tossed and the right bits included in and stuff. Or, it's just, or something was really badly miscasted and it somehow made it past QA. So made its way to here. And before these get packaged for retail, another QA part, and they toss the parts. So yeah, there's a huge 5-gallon bucket that I am going to try to sneak that out the door and put it in the trunk of my car when I go home. I'll have calf bits for the rest of my life. So what I want to do today is there's a vehicle. This one, it's a utility vehicle. It's not much, but these little open class vehicles, there's nothing made yet. So what do? Well, I make my own. Oh, was it upside down? Sorry. This is my first time streaming, so any faults or anything, just please bear with me. So I'm making a utility vehicle, which if I right, let's see. Oop. This is one of the cruise missile launchers. Do you believe this is the Whisper? And I'm going to convert it into a utility vehicle. And it can even be a vehicle that can be, not only could it just be a model in the game, but it can also be used as part of scenarios and stuff. CAV-CON, well, not CAV-CON, NashCon in 2019, we ran a scenario for demo where there were 4 cruise missile launchers, and the objective was to get to them and destroy the cruise missiles before all 4 could launch. And people really loved that game. And so I kind of, going through the bits bucket down there, I had the idea of, what about having a radar vehicle to go with it. So I went looking through the bits and I found some stuff. Got all sorts of bits here that can be used. Okay. Yeah, I know I don't use them all that much, so I don't know the ins and outs of both of them as well as I should, especially since I demo Cav. Well, I haven't been able to demo it any in the past year. Hopefully that changes here pretty soon. But went looking through the bits bin and found a bunch of these. And I'm planning on making a radar station or a radar vehicle. Now, the reason why I grabbed the commander body and I think that's the lion, is how square these bottoms are right here. And inside of the ripper here, a little bit of modification, and I've got a bed. That one seems a little tall, so we'll probably use the commander body. Go in there. Not only do I have, I want to make a radar, but I do believe in the open vehicles there's anti-air and anti-tank that uses the guided missile launcher. And look, got a platform here that's a guided missile launcher. So let's cut up some pieces here and make it easier for us. So in going through it, I noticed one thing that's got to go is this piece right here, which is used for launching the cruise missile. So we're going to get rid of that. Now the Kickstarter 2 and 1 miniatures are very easy to cut, especially with this kind of knife here. Somebody's found some good handles for scalpels and stuff, and I've got some scalpels at my house. I've got to find some handles like these. I do love these handles, but we're just gonna cut. Right there, that part gone. Rest of this part out. And like I said, if you've got any questions, feel free to post them in chat. Just give me a minute to respond, since there is a delay between chat the video. See how this fits in here now. Almost there. A little bit more. Got to remember to do this where you guys can see it. I can see it. And I can keep an eye on the knife so I don't end up in the hospital. Still have to go home to my wife, and she won't be happy if I have to go to a trip to the ER for stitches. Let's see what I kind of want the hole a little bit more towards the rear, so that's why I'm doing it this way instead of this way right here. Okay, that fits better. All right, so now we need to work on the front of this. Yep, X-Acto knife safety 101. Stay away from that end. Keep all fleshy parts away. I'm missing my Dremel right now. Use it to help remove lots of excess material that I don't want, but the knife works for this. Pretty good. I mean, anybody that has converted any of the old metal miniatures, these plastic ones are cakewalk. Now, the Kickstarter 2 material or Kickstarter 3 material, yeah, that one really needed Dremel and a little jewelry saw to help get things to cut out the way I wanted them to. A little tougher, not quite as easy as the Kickstarter 2 material, but still easier than metal. Sure. Safe knife. Close. Try not to go through the material. Cut off. All right. A whole lot better. Have that in there now. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to use another bit. All right. Been debating on whether I cut these parts off right here. I think I'm gonna have. Other thing that works to help getting stuff out is just the files. You can get these at Harbor Freight. They work with all the Kickstarter material. It helps to even out any of your rough edges. And another good tool to have is a decent set of cutters. These are, don't want to go wire cutters, something that nature. You can find them at Harbor Freight as well. Where I go get where I got my set, and I've still using that set. I've sharpened it up a couple of times, but it still works. I've bought the more expensive ones, and I've broken them on stuff I shouldn't have broken on. Flush and a lot more level. Now for this right here, I would use my Dremel to kind of help move this excess right here so that I can flatten it out, but the tools available. Looks a lot better too. Out of frame. Sorry, I'm trying. With that right there, got your, your AA utility truck. But we're going to clean it up just. I think these parts we're going to remove right here off of the commander body. Okay, I've got a barrier so I don't chop my fingers off. Trying to apply enough pressure to cut this and not hurt myself. Camera. Normally I'd have it really close to my body so I could have more control over what I'm doing, but if I put it close to my body, then you guys wouldn't see anything. Trying to do this while it's away from my body, kind of scary. Unless you go away from you, and then sometimes you just pull off the bit when it finish cleaning up these loose edges. One of the tricks that I was taught when you've done cutting, you've got a lot of these loose bits right here. You don't have any like sort of scraper or anything. What you can do is take a lighter to it real quick and it'll burn those little pieces away, and you don't apply enough heat to the rest of the miniature. They just go, they shrink up, go away, and you don't have to worry about it. clean. So these are the keys that were put in so that you would put the right hovercraft part on the right side. We won't be needing those for our utility truck because we're not going to put a hover bed on it. We're making a utility vehicle, not a vehicle that's half wheeled, half hover. Why not make it all hover at that point in time? Oh, clean it up just a little bit. Yeah, I've been the one that anytime I want a specific vehicle or CAV unit or something and it's not made, I have no shame in cutting up the stuff that will make what I want. Kind of wished I could get the parts of these to fold down, but I think this works. A little bit of 2-part epoxy putty. There's that. Now this, I've got a couple of choices here. I can either leave it as is, but I really think that that's a little too high for it. I do like how it's beveled and raised up just a little bit. What I think I'll probably do with this part is I will figure out the width of this part right here and then get a drill bit that is same width, and I'll just drill out that hole a little bit more so that this would sit in it, so it would sit a little bit lower to the bed. And you know, with that much done right there, you now have a utility vehicle that is anti-tank and anti-air, and don't have to wait or look for somebody else with sci-fi STLs. You know, heck, for about $15 you've got this vehicle made. Now I wanted to make it a radar vehicle, so of course I went and got the radar. You know, didn't get it off. This was in the bit bin, but I found a cheetah radar dish, and we're going to put it on here. We don't need the little tab that goes the body. Will the lighter idea was it helped me out with a lot of frustrating little extra bits that I didn't want anymore. I would try to file them or sand them down and they would still be there. I've got one of the GW mold line scrapers and it helps, but it doesn't, you can't get it in all the little nooks and crevices just because of how big it is. And of course, if the tool was any thinner, it wouldn't work for what it was intended in the first place. So you just have to, instead of a hammer, you just use fire to help craft your minis. All right, so bits off. Now I looked at this a couple of different ways. First way is put this so to have that part facing out. To me, I didn't really like it that way. I did like this a little bit more because it looks sci-fi and kind of cool, but it's not going to quite fit in there and remove that little extra tip. Cutters. That tip goes away. Now, the Kickstarter 3 material, when you cut and sand and stuff, it works really, really good. Sands down, you don't have a lot of the little extra stringies. Yeah, my term for them, stringies. Yeah, every so often clean your workspace so you don't have extra stuff in your way. I don't throw it away because you never know when you need something to fill a gap in a bit that you've cut off at a point in time. Comes in handy. And as you can see, that the thinnest part of this off of the cheetah works out really, really well with the missile launcher here. And what I like to do is to help fill in some of these gaps, especially for stuff that I'm not going to mess with too much, is I'll use poster tack. Just put some super glue in there, put the poster tack in there, and then super glue on this part and push it down on the poster tack. And the super glue will help harden the poster tack, and the poster tack will be just before the super glue dries, it'll still be a little squishy, so it helps to mold into all these little lines. And then of course, once you prime or you base coat your model, nobody will ever be able to tell you, hey, you use poster tack for that. Can't prove it. They'll never know. And I mean, and with these parts here, got traveling radar station now for those cruise missiles. I can do a little bit more refinement on a few things. Like for this part right here, since it's basically going to be in the bed, I would just keep filing away or dremeling it until the detail is all flat, no more raised pieces, and it fits in there better. Another thing I would do is with my Dremel, you know, especially for the parts that aren't going to be seen, you're going to glue or are covered up by other parts, don't feel bad about removing some of it and making it fit better. I mean, this is going to, they're going to get covered up by the other parts. Like all this detail in here, if it's hindering you from making your stuff work and all the detail that's on the bottom of this, you know, get rid of that detail, get it to where it's just a solid block. Of course, the Dremel really helps me to get that where I need it. And it's just a tool that I've come to appreciate over the years. It was very sorely needed for metal miniatures because it didn't have all the cool tools we have now to cut on stuff. Have boss putting stuff out there for y'all to go buy. I've got my CAV-CON t-shirt, and I love that thing. That with the Kodiak on the front of it, it looks so cool. But yeah, I mean, and look, in the space of less than an hour, but due to technical issues, I've come up with a whole new vehicle for use in the game, and it looks sci-fi. It is sci-fi, and just works for me. And like I said, it's not a $50 model that got chopped up. I mean, and just to kind of give y'all a hint, you know, that I also thought about using this right here. This is the part of the Pillager that just came out. And instead of using these guys here, I could have used this bit right in here. I wouldn't use this whole part right here. I would cut this out, cut it off right here, cut it off right there. And then with the clippers, I would trim down to where this part, and then trim all this off through here. And one of those would just about be covered up here, or I could very much so just put it to where one of these, you know, put two of these on here kind of centered going out and everything. So yeah, when I'm converting, I look at all the calves, look at everything, see what I can come up with. I mean, this thing right here, I used the legs are the enforcers. I used the Dremel and I got rid of all the extra armor that was on it. The other thing I did was for the feet, I chopped off the feet because the front of the feet looked the same as the back of the feet. And the Cyclops has more pointed feet out. So these feet are from an ogre, and this is from a previous, it came from previous modifications that I did where I've used an ogre body and a katana body to make my mastodon conversion. So I had the feet extra already. I just chopped them off and put them on here, and it looks closer to the Cyclops pictures out there. Of course, I got rid of the 2 guns that were in here. I filled that in, and yes, that's no, it's not blue stuff. It's actual Maya putty that I put in there. I found the tip of a gun I cut off from another line of miniatures, and it fit in there. And then, of course, the rocket launcher turrets. Used 2 of those to make this, and now I've got, a Cyclops here. It looks close, but the official miniature is going to look even more awesome. So mine will just become a whatever I want it to be when the actual model comes out for the Cyclops. But I'm happy with the way it turned out. And it's just kind of a thing that's just, don't be afraid to cut these models up. Who knows what you can make with the right parts. It's yeah, I've never had a problem making conversions for the more expensive game system out there. Back when I first started, one of the factions for it, there were no Chaos Terminator Lords. The only one out there was a certain leader that was in metal, and I had no problem taking a Dremel to it, cutting certain places in it here and there, and made it my own Lord miniature. And of course, a lot of people ask me, "Where did you buy that?" I'm like, "I didn't buy it. I bought it. I made it." Yeah, it's the things that go through my mind. When I'm doing this stuff. Um, you know, I also think about stuff I've seen in real life. I can't think of what they're called when I was in the military. I know we had the Hemmets at first, the 2 wheels in the back, 2 wheels up in the front, just kind of like this with the driver. Then something came out that was a little newer than them, but they didn't have anything on the beds, and they could lift the beds up off the ground and pull them in. And so when I saw the Ripper model here without the piece, the cruise missile piece inside for the launcher, I was like, maybe I could make this to work kind of like that. And who's to say you don't glue this piece on? You know, Commander come in twos, so you take the other Commander that you have, pop it out, and got a different one you want on here, and bam, got something different. Or you could just use this as a utility vehicle transport. I think we got some ammo terrain. You could put that ammo terrain on here. Get you some styrene card, cut it to where it'll fit in there, cover that up if you want, and the whatnot, and then just glue the ammo stuff, and now you've got an ammo carrier. Some of my other conversions that I've done, especially for my Cav Force, is the tanks. I've got a squad of Royal Chieftains and a Highlander, and for those, the only cutting I did was where the turret goes on the Chieftain. I used Banshee turrets to make the Royal Chieftains, and I used a Horus turret to make the Highlander. And all I had to do was I used a pair of calipers to figure out what the size for the hole, and just took a drill bit to them, and it worked out for me really well. All right, it is now 5 minutes after 2, and I think we're gonna be getting ready to show you some airbrush techniques. You're starting at 2, right? Is it 2:30? No, John's not up here. Oh. All right, I can keep going. Giant satellite dish on the back of that truck. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to have rules for every vehicle or every mod that we're going to use. The construction rules that are in the rule book, you can make up your own stuff in there and give it, put a use in it in scenarios for games. You're, after a while beating up the other player's forces all the time, gets old after a while. Making the scenarios, and I've enjoyed playing a few of the scenarios that we've made for NashCon. You can have more fun with that. It's who can outthink, to get the objective done quicker and everything. Can you have me my 2 tanks real quick so that yep. All right. Now I'll show you the chieftain. So yeah, these are chieftain bodies right here. All I did was took a drilled out put the Banshee turret on there. Voila. Royal Chieftain. Highlander. Highlander turret. Out, so it goes in. I did find extra little bit in my box of extra stuff that I've collected over the years and stuck it on there for that to be the ECM2. I wanted to kind of stick something on the body of the tank, but at the same time that would interfere with the particle bolt gun that is on the Highlander. So I didn't want to do that, so that's why I stuck it on the turret. Metal going back home. But you know, those, I mean, just 2 simple drill bits and got a whole different tank here. All right, and I've been informed that I'm going to entertain you folks for another 20 minutes. Any questions? Anything think that I might be able to answer for you? The turrets, okay, so they're just turrets from other vehicles. One's from the Banshee, the other one's from the Horus. So I didn't make the turrets. Turrets were already made. I just pulled them off of other vehicles. The Horus turret, I did add a bit to it just to kind of give it the extra bits what's used for the ECM2. And I mean, and to get the turrets to fit on the Chieftain body, all I did was I calipered the peg that calipered the peg right there that normally goes in the hole, and it because the normal hole in the Chieftain body is too small for this, and just drill bit, and voila, I've got Royal Chieftain now. Yeah, I saw. Something else for me to kind of think about going forward. Might be how I create the machine gun utility truck. All right. Any other questions? Come on. Uncomfortable silence. Ha ha ha. What are your favorite cat factions? Well, my favorite is, of course, the Ritterlick. I've been in love with them since I got back into CAV. I've played CAV since it first came out. I was part of the original Black Lightning that demoed CAV to get it out there. I've really fell in love with the game. It was a quicker way to play a mech versus mech game than the other game that's out there. I mean, if you want to consult 9 pages of charts and take 4 to 6 hours to play 4-on-4, go right ahead. I'm not going to stop you. But when you can play 12-on-12 in the space of 2 to 3 hours and then replay that same game, trying different stuff to see if you had done something different, if it would have worked better, or if the dice would have rolled for it better for you back then, you've got enough time to play 2 or 3 games in an afternoon or a weekend. My toughest mod. So far, I'm gonna say the Mastodon conversion that I've done. That's been the toughest one, just because I'm taking two main bodies and I'm chopping them up and then merging them together to make one body with the look that the Mastodon has. So I take the ogre and I chop the cockpit part off of the torso, and that gives me the back half of the torso of the Mastodon. And probably should have brought one of those with me, but I've got pictures of it in the Facebook group. So just search for my name and Mastodon, and you should be able to find the conversion. And then trying to get those two to go together and get the angle of the front half of the torso to work. That was a little rough, but like I said, with the Dremel that I got at home, it removing the material at the angle that I want, and then pinning it, cutting everything where it looks like one torso. It's a little harder, but it works. I've made 2. I was getting ready to make 2 more, but then Chris started resculpting the Mastodon, and not only did they make the Mastodon, they made 2 other variants for it as well. So kind of interested in seeing those. And one of the things I didn't realize with the Mastodon is that it's got 2 front mounted rotary autocannons. So I never did get those on there. My conversions I made. So it's going to be nice to have some actual models for that. With the dual cast, no, not yet. I want to, but I've only given the samples that were out there once with the Kodiak and the Mamba coming. That's going to give me a few extra models to buy so that I can try it out. I want to see how this material cuts. It's a little softer than the Kickstarter 3 material. So I'm kind of hoping, while it's got the ability to keep the detail of the Kickstarter 3, it's got the softness of the Kickstarter 2, so it should be easier to cut and a little bit more forgiving to get the angles and stuff I need to merge stuff up. But I mean, with the ability of not having to wait 6 months to a year for China to make stuff before I can really sit down and make anything, John's probably already going to have it printing and coming off the presses for us. Yeah, the mammoth and the elephant, and there's one more variant of that. They made three. Yeah, I've heard about that Thunderhead, so that's going to be good to see. I like the feel of the material. It works pretty good for me, especially when I was. I know there were issues with the pieces that came, and we had to do some filing down to get them to fit. But it was kind of easy for. I mean, for me, it was easy, anyways, to figure out what parts needed to be filed down so that I could get everything to fit into the holes they were supposed to, and um, at the same time looked really good. So I very impressed with the new material. I look forward to experimenting and using it. Just need more than what I've got right now before I start chopping stuff up. Funny guy. All right. Oh, we've got 10 more minutes here. What else you got for me? Thank you for going easy on my first streaming cast. I know James has mentioned something about me possibility doing something like this during the week. I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you want to see uh, a conversion every week? I'm still on. I'm just waiting for questions. That's the only part about this that sucks is question the chat and the stream, everything so discombobulated. Version weekends. Okay. It may be something I have to think about. I don't know. The weekend might be better. That way I can do it during the day because it seems the during the week the 8 o'clock sessions are really popular, and me trying to do an 8 o'clock session with kids and everything, no. So perfect stream title for Sundays. Conversion Sunday. Have I done any of the aircraft? Um, yes and no. Um, the Ritter Lightning. But no, no. Thunderbolt's a. The Ritter aircraft with 4 laser bolt guns. Um, is it the Lightning? Let me see what chat says. By the time I find it, they'll tell me what the Ritter looks. Ritter. The Typhoon.
Oh, the Typhoon, yeah. Right,
Yeah, the Typhoon is the one I'm thinking of. I was trying to work on a Typhoon conversion. I had bought this Batman Batwing uh, toy and started cutting on it, and uh, I was trying to make it more of a uh, uh, yeah. I'm just um, but it didn't work quite the way I wanted to, and then um, hearing John's ideas for the Typhoon, it kind of made me move away from using that um, as his vision for the Typhoon is to look more like the World War II Stuka. I mean, you don't have to have pins for the stability of the wings. It helps. But if you're making short wings and stuff, because remember, a lot of this is sci-fi. Not everything has to be able to go through atmospheres. Some of it can just be stuck in space. Um, the Vipers from Battlestar Galactica, perfect example. And even then, we've got anti-grav. So why can't a why does a ship that if we've got anti-grav, why can't a ship without wings fly through space? Right. Down to 5 minutes left before, well, not might be 10 minutes before Todd gets up here. We give him 5 minutes to get set up and everything. But okay, well we'll go ahead and I'll sign off and we'll get stuff ready in the background for Todd. Todd will be on in 5 minutes to show you some airbrush tricks. So, any final questions before? If not, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Todd Farnholtz here. Some of you might know me by my painter handle, Master Guns. I run Master Guns Painting Works on Facebook, and I've been painting calves for John for 5, 6, 7 years now, something like that. Since I think just right at the beginning. So today I want to talk to you guys. Hopefully you'll find it interesting about some color theory, my methods for picking schemes, and then once I decide on a scheme, how to apply that scheme. So right here, just to give you guys an idea, so this is a rhino I did for one of my mercenary forces, and it was just done in a basic OD green color from Reaper. I think it was dark olive with a little bit of crimson highlight on it, just to add a little focal point of color. And then, of course, a complementary jeweling of the cockpit. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that base color right now. And yeah, but before we get into that, I will show you my color choosing. So typically what I'll do is I'll grab palette, paper plate, or in this case, a non-porous foam plate. And all these colors that I have here are from CAV's paint line. So I think probably the last two. I don't know if the very first one has represented. But my general method would be to take like colors and put a little swatch of them out on the plate. And then in this case, I've got one of each of the colors in front of me. And then I take the back side of the brush and just kind of see what works well together more than anything. So that one, I believe, is the Crusader Blue. Let me clean my brush off real quick. And so, well, if you look at a color wheel, blue and orange typically look pretty good together. So let's see. Yeah, and I think visually that's appealing. Something to consider when you're picking your paint schemes is, especially for war games, giant mech war games in particular, is you're not really so much worried about camouflage. You know, something that's that big stomping across the horizon, it's going to stand out anyway. So I tend to like to go with something a little more flashy. In this case, like lighter blue and orange work really well together, or a darker blue. I believe that is Ebony's blue. And maybe even a lighter blue. I think that's a very cool color scheme right there. That blue's got a little bit of gray to it, so then I could even take it a step further and go with a Hydra blue right here. And that might even be a good accent color, or maybe even a highlight for the Crusader blue. So that's kind of just generally how I would go through and figure out a scheme. Because if you guys are anything like me, if I'm sitting down to paint a miniature and invest the time wood into painting a miniature, then I want to make sure I'm laying the correct paints down. And this isn't a 100% foolproof method by any means. You know, sometimes it might look like it's going to fit really well on here. Case in point, I had a scheme that was primarily this, I believe that's Adon Prairie with the Nebonese blue, and I think right there, you know, they look pretty good together. That is a base color, and then the Nebonese blue as a highlight. Well, this blue was so saturated it almost overpowered the base color of the Adonese blue, or I'm sorry, the Adon Prairie. So you know, it's not always fail safe, but this could maybe save you having to dunk and strip a miniature you've put, you know, a decent amount of time in, if you want to just go about this method. So one of my favorite schemes to do is OD green, just because, you know, these are weapons of war, and olive drab just looks really cool, to be honest. So OD green is one of my favorite ones. So CAV has a great color called War Master Bronze. Don't let the name fool you. It's actually a wonderful to work with olive drab. And in case if anybody didn't know, OD is shorthand for all. So we're going to base coat this Kodiak. So Almathril tends to like olive drab as a base color and then add various highlight colors to distinguish different units, or that's at least how Ross and myself have gone about figuring it out. And so we are going to lay down the base color. Show you guys the tricks I use to save time and get a miniature that is visually interesting to look at. So I'm going to be base coating with War Master Bronze, told you, and then I've picked a Reaper color, Knoll Pelt, as the shade. Now, when I say shade, I don't mean making something darker. I mean forcing a contrast. So shade being just the difference between two colors. So you can see these two next to each other. I like to look at the bottom of the paint pot. There's quite a bit of difference there. So a general rule of thumb that I use, now not everybody will do this, but it's Reaper has triad paint typically. They sell their colors in sets of 3 that are designed to all kind of step down from each other, step up from each other, depending on what direction you're working at. So when I'm airbrushing, I always go with the darkest color or whatever I want my base color to be, and then I take 2 steps with the triad and then remove the middle one. So case in point, if this was color A and this is color C, and say you have a mid-tone green that's color B, get rid of color B. So I'll base coat in C, or I'm sorry, base coat in A, and then I will add my highlight shading with the airbrush in C. And the reason I do that is because I'll typically do a full body wash over the base color before going any further, as that wash will kind of serve to tie those two. So from there, let me get my airbrush loaded up. We already got pressure and we're good to go. Always handy to have some plastic cups and some airbrush thinner. Oh, where's my airbrush? So for a miniature this size, with an airbrush, they're very efficient. Doesn't take a whole lot, so I'm thinking probably 5 or 6 drops maybe. And then I keep it real simple, and I just do a 1-to-1 ratio. So 5 drops of paint, drops of thin. Be able to get okay. All right. Back into the brush to mix it up. So what you're looking for here, you probably heard this if you ever watched an airbrush video before. You're looking for the consistency of about 2% milk. So check that, mix it up, and then just drag it up the side of the bottom of the cup. You see how it's kind of translucent? This is actually probably going to be maybe a little too thick, but I'm working with a low enough pressure, about 15 to 20 psi, where I don't think it's going to gum up the airbrush. We're going to find out. Okay, so the cup's full. I like to check, wearing rubber gloves, obviously. I like to check the flow on the back of my hand. And then if you're using a double action airbrush, so what double action means is you can control the pullback of the needle backside here. So this, actually, I'm sorry, this looks like just a single action. Some of them will have a dual action lug on the back that'll prevent the needle from going back to whatever you set it. You loosen the lug up, the needle can go farther back and give you a wider spray pattern, or you tighten it up and give yourself a more narrow spray pattern. There's a lot of different things to consider with your airbrush when you're trying to figure out what exactly it is you want to do. If you're just base coating, you probably want to go with a bigger needle like a 0.5. Minor detail work, you can get away with using a 0.5 if you choke that the lug on the back, if you choke that up so that it doesn't travel very much. But again, just test it on the back of your hand, see how I can get a real fine point right there, or if I pull back, I get a lot of coverage. So do the little tricks. All right, so we're going to do the base coat on this thing. Now, I like to do a top down at 45 degrees all the way around, and I do that because I like to prime in black. Always just primed in black, and then I'll hit the miniature from 45 degrees all the way around just to get a good even coat, because again, I paint for tabletop. So if it's on the tabletop, typical arm's length rule, 3 feet away, the black undercoat and then the paint hitting at 45-degree angle is going to create natural shadows, give you that pop effect. So miniature look like it has more depth rather than just base coating the entire thing one opaque uniform. So I just do sweeping motions, top. I don't know if you guys can see the paint coming down. Just start top to bottom, back and forth. And if parts of the model are blocking other parts of the model, like the arms are blocking part of the leg, we can go back and focus in on those areas a little bit later. It's probably going to take 2 or 3 passes to get a good smooth base coat that doesn't just look like black, but it's going to be worth it. So now that OD green's really starting to show through, nice smooth even coat. I am already out of paint. Wow. Okay. Give me 1 second to mix some more. Guess I should have doubled it. I'm going to go ahead and do 8 to 8 this time. Still quite a bit. So again, that's 8 parts paint to 8 parts thinner. I actually at home, Amazon, I bought I think it was 5,000 tattoo ink cups for mixing my paint. I think they're 3 cc a piece. Cc is a cubic centimeter, because you're always going to lose a little bit of paint on the transfer from the cup into the hopper on the air. So sometimes you take that into consideration. I guess this miniature is a little bit bigger than what I had anticipated, and flow is good. All right, and then you just pick right back up where you're going. Another thing to consider too, if you paint or mix your paint thin enough, then you don't really have to worry about tip dry, as long as you're not just holding that that needle down or that button down to release the paint. If you guys can tell, that olive drab green, real dark, it's starting to come out, but it is uniform. So then the next step is going to be to start adding focal points. And the focal points are typically where the light's going to hit, at least in the real world. But what I like to do is add focal points to where I want the eye of whoever's looking at it to draw to. And that's the point at which I told you we could go back and add some more to wherever it was we were missing during the initial base coat. Can't really tell from my screen if the green's coming through. But so adding the focal points, I'm going to lower the PSI to probably so I get a little more control. There we go. All right.
You're not able to.
No, I don't have my phone open. Are there questions?
So, is there a reason why you wouldn't mix it?
Yeah, the reason would be sometimes, so if you have a really thick paint for whatever reason, you know, maybe it sat on a shelf for a little too long or you haven't used it in a while. If you put the paint in and then the thinner into the pot, you can get a disproportionate amount of paint down by the needle, and that will quickly gum the needle up. And then you have to take the whole airbrush apart and clean it and all that kind of stuff. So mixing it outside the hopper in a separate container is just a method of ensuring you're going to get even consistency throughout.
And then Jeff, kind of been
Well, with an airbrush, you don't have any CFCs or anything, so I don't use any ventilation myself at home. I know they sell kits and stuff for it, but I mean, I have a pretty open room where my paint station is. But should you want to, if you're spraying like anything that's not acrylic based, it's probably a good idea to at least wear a mask. But I personally don't use any kind of ventilation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're using like a resin-based sealer or something through your airbrush, you definitely want to wear a mask because you don't want that stuff getting in your lungs. But when you're working at pressures this low, especially if you're not spraying directly into your face or your mouth, then it's really not anything to worry about. Yeah.
Don't get yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Don't stick your face in and spray in a cardboard box, because then all that air pressure is just going to come right back at you. Plus, you could get some paint particles and whatnot you might not intend that dry partially in the air. They can land on your miniature and give you kind of a fuzzy effect. So yeah, always just blowing in a well-ventilated area. No backstop typically, but if you do have to have a backstop, then that's why they make those airbrush paint stations that have the little fan at the back. So going back to any other questions, John? So going back to picking out focal points. So looking at the miniature here, again, you can do two different methods. Let's see if I can get it. You guys can see the top of the legs towards the knee, the top of the feet, right there at the base of the cockpit, the ends of the arms. Those are all areas at this angle that are catching a lot of light. So if you wanted to go for a realistic look, then you could use those as your focal points. But what I want is a tabletop popping kind of a look. So what I'm going to do is artificially emphasize what I want the person looking at the miniature to see, whether it be myself or whoever's across the table from me. So I'll typically focus on going a little bit closer and laying a little bit more paint down towards the front of the feet. And again, I'm not working on the highlight color yet. I'm just making sure that the base color is more emphasized. So on the front of the feet and then on the front of the knees. Short controlled bursts. I'm sure you guys have heard that about, you know, when you're firing rifles or anything. Same principle for an airbrush, short controlled bursts. Okay, and I think we'll do a little bit on the front of the chest as well, right below the cockpit. Maybe a little bit right there. And you can go pretty heavy doing it this way because, again, it's your base color, so it's going to blend in. I'm getting some flow issues here. Okay, clean that up a little there. Ooh. Yeah, when that happens, you had a slight clog in your airbrush. And again, we're working on the base coat right now, so it's not a big issue. If you're starting to do highlights, you definitely want to not linger. Better. And then I'll also see, I'm probably on this, I'm probably going to paint the guns a different color, so I'm not really worried about doing that. I think I'll do the side of the missile pods. I do normally like to focus on the weapons because, well, again, these are machines of war, so make the weapons stand out. Oh, and another trick to use when you're doing this, but actually more so when you're highlighting or using the next shade to highlight, is angle the airbrush away from the model to where the overspray will not really hit other parts of the model. And I'll show you how to use your finger to screen that here in a minute. I think my pressure might be a little high still, but okay. And as you work towards the top of the model, I like to lay a little bit heavier coat of paint on that. See if that's, yeah, you can see the shade. So again, that's all just with one color applied at different thicknesses, or giving us different levels of opacity. And now we're going to build it up a little bit more, just because I really like that. I really like how it looks. Occasionally, you might need to do what they call backflowing or backblowing the airbrush. So take a paper towel. What you're looking for is bubbles in the cup, right? And if you start to get too heavy of a buildup on the needle, that typically will clear it. Sometimes you might actually have to remove the front cap or the needle guard and actually take a paper towel, preferably damp. You don't want to ever try and bend the needle. You just want to grip the needle from the front, pull out. And that'll remove any paint that might be starting to collect there and gum it up. Yep, so there we go. Now we got flow again. So some of you might be thinking, well, what about the back of the miniature? Well, I've always been of the opinion, if anyone other than you has seen the back of your miniature and you're actually playing a game, you've probably done something wrong. So I tend to not focus on the paint scheme of the backside of a miniature too much, but that's just my personal preference.
Question.
Yeah.
You might read
Okay.
free fall decaf with your airbrush.
Yes, I use Krylon flat black primer, the 2x coverage. It works on regular Bones minis. It works on CAV minis, resin, anything. It bonds to plastic, metal, you name it. It's the best stuff I've ever used.
Yes, Twitch out. How long?
The Kodiak right here, start to finish with everything, would probably take maybe 4 or 5 hours. It depends on the scheme too. If I'm just doing a regular basic olive drab, pick out a couple guns, jewel the cockpit, and maybe dry brush some silver onto the joints to make them look a little worn. You could probably knock this out in hour and a half maybe. Not including wash dry time, but I mean actual like brush to miniature time. Okay, so but for the sake of completion, we are going to, I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight on the side of the leg. Things to consider while you're airbrushing are distance to the miniature. The farther away, the less focused the paint's going to be. So if I'm up close, and I hit it real hard, you can see the paint coming out real heavy. Again, that's why you use like the kind of pulsing actions. And I'm only focusing towards the top of that bit sticking out on the leg. There's lots of other things you can do with an airbrush as well. Once you get a little more comfortable, you can basically reverse this technique, kind of do a metallic shading, but definitely get comfortable with this type of technique. That one. I think I'm going to pick out. And again, you don't have to necessarily follow where the light would actually hit. You want to follow what you want to be the focal point. It's all about providing a focal point, because the eye is going to be drawn to the colors that pop out. I know the cockpit's probably going to be a different color. I typically do my cockpits in black just to get them to stand out and provide contrast to whatever cockpit color I end up doing. I might do a little bit on the front of that. I don't really know what you'd call that armor plate right there. I guess it's almost like a hip guard. A little bit of overspray onto the other part of the leg is fine. Again, we're still working with the base color, so if it oversprays a little bit, as long as it's not a watermark level of paint concentration, you're probably okay. But again, you can always go back and fix that later. Just remember, guys, half the trick of painting with an airbrush is knowing how to hide your mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes. It's just as simple. But as long as you can utilize them to still get a miniature that you're happy with on the table, matters. He's pretty good base coat. Yeah. 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 John's relaying questions to me.
So, admin said, no, I mean no disrespect in this, but two categories.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying on that. Some people either don't have access to an airbrush or are not comfortable using an airbrush. Certainly what you can achieve with an airbrush is I don't want to say better. I mean, there's some miniatures I paint that I don't use my airbrush at all. I just use a lot of glazing. It's certainly more time consuming to get the same effects you get with an airbrush with a paintbrush, just using glazes and things like that. I don't know that I'd say they should be separated, only because those skills are able to be learned like any other. Now, if you just started painting and you got your first set of brushes, your first set of paints, you might only know what a base color and then a wash is, and then a dry brush. Like that's how like most of us started out. You base color, you wash, you dry brush. As you get more advanced, you learn about glazes, or you learn about panel lining, object source lighting, things like that. Everybody has access to those same tools and techniques. It's just how much time you've been able to develop them. So I don't know that I'd say airbrushing needs to be its own category so much as maybe only reserved for intermediate to advanced competitions. I don't know. That's just my personal thought. So let's see. Do I want to add anything else before I clean the brush? You know what? Actually, now that I think about it, because there's 3 of these heavy Macs on this guy, I think I'm actually going to maybe just pick out some colors and keep the housings the same color as the rest of these. So again, same principle as up on the missile launchers. I want to pick out the ends of the barrels. That was a little too. You know what? That's between me and James. That's an often contested thing. I personally, I don't have any problem using a cheap airbrush. I have a Badger Patriot at home that is fine for detail work, and but my go-to is a cheap one I got off Amazon with a 0.5 needle. It's a dual action. I think it's from Gourmet, or I don't even know what the name is. It's some off-brand. I think I picked it up through Master Airbrush store via Amazon. And that's my workhorse. I use it 90% of the time for anything I do, including this kind of work here. I don't so much think that the brand or quote-unquote quality of the airbrush is really so much a factor as your ability to control it. Again, mechanically speaking, all airbrushes are basically the same. You know, there might be some minor differences, like again, full action lug or whatever the case may be, or you know, the size of the needle guard or whatever it is. But a lot of it's pretty well cosmetic. Some people won't agree with that, and that's fine. It's just from my personal experience. So again, guys, you see I'm focusing on the gun barrels, so I'm angling the miniature so that the overspray does not land back on what I've already painted. Again, we want the top down. Something else to consider too, if you're doing a vehicle like an aircraft, or maybe you have like a big honking cav or something like a Thunderbird or something, if you turn it upside down like this, it's still jet black on the bottom. So what you can do is just take your airbrush kind of far away, and you're kind of just spraying a filter on it at that point. You open up the needle all the way, but not too close. And I'm just getting the bottom sides of everything to at least be in the same shade. So now from the bottom, it definitely has a bit of a more uniform OD green rather than being. So that's the initial shading right there. So I'm going to clean out this this hopper and then load up the highlight color. So give me 1 minute. Any questions while I'm doing this? Oh, well, I guess I can go through this then. So when you're changing colors in your airbrush, you want to make sure you get as much of the prior color out as possible. And again, we go back to the back flowing technique. Some guys use a airbrush pot, which is like a little encased, you know, glass jar with a rubber nipple on it that you can stick the airbrush in and then blow it out into it. That's fine for when you've got a majority of the paint out, but when you're trying to clear it all out, you want to use a good airbrush thinner, or at the very least a water mixture with Windex or Fantastic or something like that. Something's got a little bit of a astringent in it. All right, see. So what you're looking for here as we back blow it is you want it to come out a little bit cleaner each time. Then blow it back. See, now when it comes into the paper towel, it's pretty well just clean water at this point. Oh.
So a question, Todd, from Dave. Technical question. Keep the paint airbrush wet for you're taking your with one model, you have to get mine out of full.
You can use airbrush thinner, the stuff we're using right here. John, I believe it's isopropyl, or that's your own personal mixture.
That's just I put the for distilled water, alcohol.
Okay, so John told me he makes his own. It's he'll post the recipe for it. It's distilled water, alcohol, and glycerin, all readily available. You can mix it yourself, or alternately, yeah, the glycerin is what stops it from drying in the cup and on the needle. Most companies that make paints, Reaper makes one, Vallejo makes one. They're airbrush flow improvers, and it's basically the same mixture. Truth be told, though, this stuff I'm using that John made is it's fantastic. It's better than any of the other ones I've used so far. Yeah, it's doing really well. Oh, I mixed into that, didn't I? Yeah, I'm gonna have to get that mixture from you.
Because and then the cleaners basically.
Yeah. Yeah, this stuff works great. All right, guys. So again, the highlight color we're going with Knoll Pelt, and again, that's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio. We don't need so much for a highlight, so I'm thinking maybe 4-to-4. I probably won't end up using it all, but we shall see. Let's see what this is. A little thick, a little bit more. So the reason I chose Knoll Pelt is it's not such a saturated green. I think you might call it like a swamp green or something. But again, when you apply it with an airbrush, it's going to apply in such a thin layer that part of the base color is still going to show through. So thinking, in fact, I might add just a little bit of master. Thinking the difference might be a little too severe. So that's, again, adding more to the base color. It's going to help to tie it all together and then darken it up just a little. That's better. Hope that's enough. Get into the hot. Again, highlights are supposed to be really controlled, so we shouldn't need a whole lot. All right, so here, since overspray with a highlight color is something that's need to be a little more concerned with, I'll sometimes, again, where I wear gloves, I'll use my finger to kind of act as a spray guard. Nice smooth transition there. So airbrushing is it's definitely a time-saving method, but you don't want to rush it. And again, this is just about providing focal point. Tips of those are now standing out quite a bit. Let's go front of the chest. Let's see if I can get my big old thumb in here. And again, something to consider too when you're planning your scheme out is I know I'm going to paint the cockpit a different color later, so I'm not worried about overspray on it. And again, we're not shooting for realistic highlights. We're shooting for what's interesting to the eye, so visual focal point. Right below the cockpit, I want that to kind of stand out a little bit more, so I put a little bit more on. And then basically, wherever I added the more intense base color, I'll go back and hit those same areas. So right on the top of the knees. And then the farther down the foot we get, I'll just concentrate more on the top of the toes. Way around to the side of the leg. Same thing there. Now, if you guys are doing more intricate paint schemes, obviously this technique's probably not going to work very well. Typically reserve it for when a miniature is like 75% or more one color. Most CAVs, tanks, military schemes, things like that. There. And again, angling the miniature so my overspray does not land on what I've already painted. For the guns, I'm going to focus the color a little bit more towards the top. So almost like drawing a little triangle on it. Okay, so now that's pretty well the extent with the focal points that I want to do on the front. Back.
Chandler Scott asked, box between a bottom.
Always a top feed. Gravity feeds are always better than siphon feeds, only because siphon feeds waste a lot of paint. Yeah.
Jeff asked, what about light?
Yep. I still do a black prime as a yellow base. You just have to go a little heavier with the color. It's always easier to, at least with an airbrush, to lighten something up than it is to darken it out again. Unless you're just immensely skilled with your application, control it really well. You can always add more paint on top of something to lighten it. It's like adding salt to food. You can always add a little bit more, but once you've added too much, you can't take it away. And the same applies for working over a white primer. White primer is definitely better for just doing strict brush work.
JS Twitch asks, what PSI do you?
Tip for base coats about 15 to 20. For highlights about 15. I never really go above 20, 25 psi sometimes if it's a really big miniature and I've really thinned the paint.
Yellow.
You can. It depends on what your final results want to be. If you want a more golden yellow, then you can definitely go over a brown. But if you're going for like a imperial fist, like the quintessential yellow. If you're going for like an imperial fist yellow, then I would still go over black, but just make sure you apply it in opaque enough amount that the shadows are still what shines through. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm having a conversation with Hugh. He's gonna come over here so you guys can hear him.
All right, so one of the colors I'm trying to learn. What if you want to paint what if you want to paint a neon type of color on the
neon color?
Yeah, like, rock, loud and proud, man.
Oh,
lime green.
Lime green, yeah, lime green. You're probably better off just using a stippling brush.
Because I tried doing there was this paint scheme I found that used a real bright yellowish green looking neon color, and I had trouble bringing it out. It was more dull than.
You might, well, if that's the case, then if it's only like a highlight color for something, again, black primer is just my preference. It's by no means the end all be all. You have to work from black. I'm not saying that. That's just what, with my style, what I like to do. So that being said, if you're going for something that's neon, but maybe, is that the base color or is that a highlight color?
Base.
Oh, so the base color. So if it's the base color, then what you probably want to do is do a what they call an OSL, an source light, or some people would call it a zenithal highlight. So you do a black base coat, and then at 45 degrees you hit it with gray, and then straight above you hit it with white. And just make sure that the white part on the top. That way, when you apply the base color with the airbrush, because the colors you're laying down are inherently semi-transparent just by how thin they are, that base coloring is going to shine through. It's going to give you that natural shading, which would also emphasize whatever color that you're putting on top of it to appear brighter towards the top. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. So I would go with the zenithal priming before base coloring. Let's something else I wanted to point out to you guys. So back here on the back of the legs, I didn't do any of the base color color buildup right here, but I decided to hit it with the highlight color more or less to show you guys that you can actually fix an issue even if you missed a step, we'll say. So again, I forgot to apply the base color more thickly on the back of the leg right here, and then decided to add a highlight color because I wanted it to pop more. So at that point, you can just kind of go in close and just tap onto it. See, so it's still giving a focal point, but it just kind of allows you to go back and I guess correct a mistake. Or a perceived mistake by maybe thinking you missed a step. I think that's about where I want to take it. So as a base color goes, popping, and then we'll go on to ensure the rest of it stands out. Back to cleaning it. Now, were there any other questions about the airbrush before I switch gears?
Question from Jeff. Do you tip the missiles in higher contrast?
You know what? That's really... Honestly, my preference has always been to do missiles in like a grayish blue, because then when I put that little yellow or little white tip on the very end of them, I feel like that provides all the focal contrast that I need. You can do missiles in whatever color you want to do. I've seen them done in red, yellow, green. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, miniature painting is all about contrast, 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 contrast. So if you want the missiles to really stand out, like maybe that's a fire support cav, and you want everybody on the table to know that's what his job is. Yeah, by all means, if you do a green base coat, do a red missiles or yellow missiles or something that's going to be complementary but still fit, or still contrast. Oh, okay. So you're wanting to go with like a coolant green. Yeah, Hugh was showing me the picture he was referring to. All right, so yeah, John, this airbrush thinner mixture takes two run throughs to get it. Okay, set that down. All right, and now, fun part. No, not the. All right, first thing, you're going to hear a lot of different people have a lot of different opinions about this, but I like to dry brush. Always have, will. Done correctly, I think it's invaluable technique. Should never be discounted. A lot, cheap way of getting it in bolt. I don't agree. So, first point is the best dry brushes in the world are not hobby dry brushes. The best dry brushes in the world are makeup. This is a cheap round makeup brush, real soft bristle from, I don't even know where you got it, probably dollar store. These are the best things ever for dry brushing. Key to remember with dry brushing is a little bit of paint on the bristles. You want to clear it all off. I'm sure you guys have all heard this before. No paint left. The reason we like to use softer bristles because they're going to deposit a little bit less paint than a stiffer bristle will. And that gives you more control. Focusing on the front of the cockpit area, armor module that comes to it. I see that. Is that showing up, John? From dry brushing, pressed. The thing to focus on here, guys, is you never want. Sometimes you'll see newer painters, all over the damn thing. You never want to do that. Like anything else, you want to have a controlled application. So always focus on going against. Yeah, so, that's what I had just just told him that it's the softer bristles, so you get more control. Plus, because it's laying less paint down, you can actually increase pressure a little. And it almost adds like a blended effect. I mean, dry brushing 101 is catches the raised surfaces, gives you that highlight. And this isn't by any means the only level of highlight that I do. I'll do this just kind of to lay down the focused areas. And again, it's all about contrast, all about focus. And then kind of work the areas to get them. See here on the top of the missile rack. That focus. Okay. So right here on the top of the missile rack, that's just the airbrushing I've already done, and then a dry brushing, same color, not diluted at all, null pelt. And it's just time. And sometimes you'll get it on raised surfaces like right here where it might get a little chalky looking. That's fine. You can always go back and fix it later. It's not going to affect anything that's just meant for the tabletop. And if you want to just, finish the miniature like this and stop it at that point, then I mean, you totally can. It'll be totally serviceable for the table. Highlight colors, that work too. But just take your time. That's the key. Any procedure. And see how the real soft bristles are laying that nice crisp highlight panel edges. Clearly, I mean, this wouldn't work nearly as well on something with a lot more. This miniature is very angry. Really getting it all. And again, once I'm done highlighting it, once I'm done dry brushing it, I'll actually go back with the same color, highlight it, just using the edge of my detail brush. Someone hit me with some questions. I get nervous with silence.
Listen.
No, we don't want dead air. I'm trying to think of something to trying to think of something to fill the void while I do this. Take your time. James, our James.
Yes. Where's Mr. James hiding at?
I think Mr. James is painting something special. Edge highlighting.
Right now.
What's that?
We've got weights on
Oh. Okay, I'm sorry. Repeat the question then. Edge highlighting.
it. Edge highlighting over the airbrush.
Is that a question?
Question mark in.
Is he asking, am I edge highlighting over the airbrush work? I guess kinda. I'm dry brushing over the edge. I will go further and edge highlight to like an extreme highlight. Certainly.
Do you edge?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, I guess I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Well, he didn't. Chandler Scott. So do you rather put dry fit?
I typically assemble completely, and that's only because I'm not going to waste time painting something no one's ever going to see. So if it's the underside of that, if it's the underside of that arm right there, and there's no possible way I can get a detail brush in there to paint like the hydraulic housings or whatever, no, I'm not going to bother painting them. That just, I don't know. Again, I'm painting for tabletops, so no one's ever going to be that close to look at it and notice that little detail. Now, that being said, if I was ever entering a competition or something, yeah, maybe. But again, unless they're getting up and picking the miniature up and scrutinizing it and turning it over and all that kind of stuff, then probably not. Because it's not about, at least to me, painting's not about being technically perfect all the time. It is about the overall visual effect of it.
Dave asked her, they have been discussed, but what size?
That one, it felt like a 0.3 medium grade. Yeah, so airbrush needles come in all different shapes and sizes, not shapes, all different sizes. 0.5s are typically used for base coats or larger areas. 0.3s are kind of a medium range, and a 0.2. In fact, I don't know that it actually gets below 0.2. It might. I've never. Yeah, 0.2 would be about the lowest would ever maybe comfortably go, because at that point you're having to thin your paint so much that it was blowing water at that point. I mean, I doubt it's going to say on the air housing only.
No, I was looking.
Oh, looking at the needle. Dry brushing is very, very. The other nice thing too about using a black base coat is you don't necessarily need to do a wash if you don't want to. And those colors are going to be, they're going to have a nice contrast in. And that's really all a wash is meant to do, is emphasize shadows. No, I said I was going to paint the cockpit anyway, but just completion. When you guys see this neato plinth that I have this miniature on, so I'm not touching it with my hands to rub the paint off the edges. This is one from John. Is this the one that comes in the swag bag, John? Yeah. So this is one of the plinths for holding your miniatures while you paint them that comes as part of your swag bag. Giveaway. Go on. Into the giveaway. Wait.
We're
All right, guys. Well, hey, pay attention. We are getting ready to give away a $25 gift certificate for Talon Games. Talon.games. Talon.games. The sneaky.
funny how that worked out for us.
Yeah. Yeah, the sneaky store. You know, if you guys are anything like me, sometimes I like on my lunch break at work, I'll just sit, at my computer and I'll watch videos of guys painting, zone out.
For the two, please. Yes, Chandler, they're both in the swag bag.
Yes, Chandler, they're both in the swag bag. Just in case you couldn't hear John.
When I use my command voice.
We could always pick out Chandler's bag and make sure there's nothing in it. Go find some coal to put in there for him.
Miss you, Chandler.
Are they sized?
This one's John sized for sure. I mean, I don't have huge hands; they're not small hands, but it's comfortable. I'll say that. It's definitely not bad. Really? I've got one of
You
them.
notice that they went to a smaller one? They've got two.
Yeah, John said that he measured GWs. Oh no, never mind. I'm supposed to not say.
Ignore it.
Ignore it. You did not hear me say anything.
Not sure.
I'm gonna have to re-glue this. I guess press it with.
We heard nothing.
Are you in there commenting, Hugh?
Not yet. Why type it when I can just talk it?
Oh, that's true.
Chandler responded back to us. He can feel the love from us.
Chandler, are you going to be there in September? This is still that Noel Pelt. I'm working backwards here, guys. I apologize. Noel Pelt. Oh, okay.
Chandler said, yes, sir. Room ready and already booked.
Of course it is. I would expect nothing less from our resident dragon. All right. I think about done with
So, how completed would you say this mini is?
right now. If I was just doing a basic OD green scheme, I would say this one's probably 60%. Where I would personally, if I was at home painting this, I would take this, is give it an overall camo wash to kind of tie it all together and to tone down some contrasts between the two shades. And then once that was dry, I'd go back and, again, using Noel Pelt, re-pick out only the topmost highlights. So that's going to give you your base color, your shade color, which is the Noel Pelt, and then the dry brush color, which is also Noel Pelt, but it's applied in a much heavier layer to only the highlighted edges. And then once you wash it, it tones it all down, and you go back and only do the extreme edge highlights with null pelt, and that's basically it. And at that point, you can paint the cockpit whatever color you want, and pick out some missile tips, details, things like that. Paint the base, and basically done. If you want to take it farther, you can pick out some armor panels in alternating colors, or whatever you want to do. But yeah, I'd say as far as a base coat to just get it on the table with minimal work left, this is about 60%.
Me, I would say that's 30%.
Dave asked if the notebook in the swag bag is John going. Just for you, you're going to get a picture of a hand with a big finger.
I hope you guys all heard that. Now, Hugh, you said that's 30%.
It to me, it seems like it's maybe this is where I've not watched as many, and I don't watch a whole lot of painters. Mainly when I want to learn something, I go look for it on YouTube or website, and then watch just that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I've done, I've taught myself. Not set down at anybody. Some of the stuff that I've even picked up a couple of years just from talking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was just curious where
just looking at this, I feel like the OD green hasn't covered it.
Okay, I gotcha.
But I like the effect
more,
that I'm seeing.
Yeah, more contrast will be applied once the base is painted. That'll give you black. Again, I would never myself put this on the table as it is right now because it's not complete. I would get it to its finished result, which would be something close. Again, that's after a wash to bring out the contrast and maybe a highlight color, picking out metallics to break the scheme up a little. But if I was just needing to get a ton of these done for a tournament, or I would say, how long have I been painting on this?
It's over now.
A little over an hour. So in an hour, we went from black primer to this point. I'd say, yeah. So to answer that question earlier, you could probably be 100% done with this, again, not including wash dry time, in 2 hours of actual paint time, only using 2 colors so far. So that being said, I think I'm going to do the wash.
And Emily won the drawing.
Gimli won?
Gimli won.
Congrats, Gimli.
Is he the one that won all the stuff last time?
Look what's up next.
Hmm.
This is for you, Ross. All right, guys. Next, we're gonna mix up a wash. Do you have any other questions about base colors before I move on?
Dave asked, do you do anything to the panel line within a?
Not normally, no. I do not do anything other than a wash to the sort of reinforcement. All right, so mix up a wash. Typically with OD green, I would just use Army Painter's Camo Shade because it's fantastic and shades beautifully, especially with this formula that I use. I paint this particular scheme a lot. So that being said, I do not have access to that right now, so I'm going to mix my own. So if you guys ever wanted to know how to mix a wash, do it. So we have Reaper's Wash Medium, then Reaper's Brown Liner, Black Wash, and then Vallejo Game Ink. I only pulled this because I couldn't find a green wash or a green liner stuff here. So since this is a black and green scheme, one would think that black and ink would, well, it's kind of it's pretty intense. That's why I only did 2 drops, even though I'm probably going to do about 10 drops. There's not any real surefire ratio. You kind of just have to try it and see if it's got the consistency. So I'm doing 2 drops of the black green. I'll do a drop of the black wash, and that's more just to add the surface surfactant from the wash to allow surfactant. Thank you. To allow it to pool. A little bit more of that. Then 1 drop of brown liner, and hopefully get it to a shade that we're probably gonna have to mix up more of this. But before I commit, I want to see how this. 8 or 9 minutes. That's plenty of time to apply. So again, what I'm looking for is consistency. Same thing as with paint. Mix for your airbrush, and I think I'm gonna add a little.
Free fall decals. What are you looking for in? Never done
Okay, if you've never done a mini wash, then what I'm looking for is basically colored water. Is there a prime? I think there's a couple on. You mind if I? There's a couple on that shelf there. Yeah. Just one that's primed white or something. What I'm, yeah, that's fine. We can always prime over it later. All right, so hey, look, a mamba. All right, so what I'm looking for in a wash is its reaction to surface it's on. So when I put it on here, you want it to flow into the recesses, not pool on flat surface, or at least not pool excessively. So this consistency right here, you see how it's running to the recesses, collecting around there and in the deep edges. Washes by their nature are going to stain their undercoat a little bit, but that's why I'm mixing a green wash to go over a green base coat. But yeah, this is the property I'm looking for it to do. Run away from the flat surfaces, run to the recesses, and collect. Dries, that's what gives us our contrast. Actually, and looking at this on a white primer coat,
right before.
okay. Yeah, so John's just told me that right at 4 o'clock, we're going to go offline for a little bit, so I've got to finish. Okay. Yeah, then Party Bear is going to come on it. That's so for OD, because OD green is a darker green, it's not so saturated. I definitely want a wash that's a little more on the black scale. I think this is going to do. And so the thing to remember with washes is you want them to go towards the shadows. So I'll just do the bottom of the lake here to get you guys to want to start where the miniature is the brightest, and you want to pull away from it, because that's going to cause the wash to flow into the recess. Do what you need. You never want to slop a wash on. You always want to, like anything else, be controlled with it.
least for me, careful not.
Yes, yeah. John makes an excellent point. You want to make sure that you are not going back over the wash. Yeah, you can. If it starts to collect in some place you don't want it to, rinse off your brush real quick, and then wick it out. So yeah, I'll purposely make a mistake here. I put way too much water. Let me find a spot it's gonna do it on. I think I might have mixed this one.
That's the common mistake I find.
Yeah.
Go.
Yep. Nope. You want to just lay the wash down and move on. You gotta fix it later. You can fix it later. Because you got to remember too, gravity is going to pull that wash down. Especially because we've monkeyed around with the chemistry of the surface. I can find an area where it's actually going to pull up. Let's see. That's intentionally. I'm gonna drag it towards. I'm not. I might have been off camera for a second. Ah, man. Okay, I mixed this up way too well. It's not. It's not pulling at all on the flat parts. Okay, well that's good.
Any particular brush washing?
When you're when you're applying a wash, use the oldest, nastiest brush you have. You never want to apply a wash with a good brush because it is going to ruin it, just like dry brushing.
You don't want it.
Yeah, you don't want it too stiff. So like I would typically, this is about a number 3, I think, which is probably going to be about as large as you want to go. You don't want to ever apply too much wash at one time, only because that's going to make it really hard to control. Now, unless you're doing a very large surface like a Badger dropship, but that's the whole leg done.
My big project brush is.
Yeah, hey, there you go. A 2-inch wide Purdy brush will work fine on a dropship. But let's see. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I got a pulled spot here. I can actually show you guys now. All right, so on the top of the armor panel, on top of the, you guys can see, on the top of this armor panel, the wash has pooled, right? And so when that dries, that's going to dry significantly darker. It probably wouldn't be noticeable only because that's the dark part of the armor panel. But all I did was rinse my brush off, and then I'm just going to dab it on top of that. Guys, that'll wick that wash away. 2 minutes. All right, I am wrapping it up, guys. I think that's pretty well it, and then you just continue that over the whole rest of the model. Again, go back, take this case of this scheme, null pelt, hit only the topmost hard edges towards, go this part to this part, like a little section there, and just make those the focal points. Put it on the table. That's what draws your eye, or draws your eye.
Dave asked if the Reaper available.
Yeah, Reaper has the wash medium available.
I really like.
Yes, Liquitex makes a great one. You have to mix it yourself. I think it comes as more or less a concentrate, and you mix it yourself. But yeah, it works really, really well.
We don't.
Reaper does sell one, which is the one I'm using here. Not very expensive. Definitely pick it up from them if you're buying some non-cav paint.
If I think about it, Dave, I'll pick some up. And
yeah, Dave, if you heard John, he said, or if you didn't hear John, he said he would pick some up and keep it in the store next time he thinks about it. Because yeah, remember, Talon Games carries the full range of the Bones paints. Yeah, carries the full range of the Bones paint.
I'll get them in next week.
They'll be in next week. Any other questions, guys, while I finish this off? And just so you know, this is the first miniature that I have painted in probably 6 weeks. So I'm going to see this guy through to completion, and then when I'm done, I will post pictures.
Everybody, we're going offline.
All right, guys, it's been fun. Thanks for joining me. Be going offline for about 5 minutes while we get set up with Party Bear to come in and show you some other painting. Oh, dude, this Kodiak is amazing. I'm sad that I didn't get a chance to start working on the hind, but maybe I'll have to do another one of these. All right, good night, everybody.